Welcome to the Report for Doug Amount. We're going to talk about how the far left and the far right agree on something. Yes, they agree on Zionism. Stick around and listen. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to talk about that thorny issue of the Israel-Palestine conflict and how it's strange bedfellows at the moment, how the far left and the far right agree on the Israel-Palestine conflict. If you look into, if you go to many people who are far left activists, from Clementine Ford to Richard Lowenstein to a whole bunch of people, they all agree at the moment that the Zionists are completely out of control and murdering people left, right and centre, and that, the language they use to describe what's going on in Gaza is, I think quite appropriate, but it actually kind of matches essentially the critique of the far right when it comes to the Zionists, it's rather strange, but not really that strange. I've always thought that the far left and the far right are not as poles apart as people think. First of all, they're both kind of utopian. The far right and the far left are both utopian. And I guess, do I call it the far left? I call it the authentic left. To me, the authentic left is anti-Zionist, right? And to me, the authentic right is anti-Zionist as well. So, these are, what I would say is the difference is that what the left is seeing the Zionists do to the Palestinians and, the bombing of hospitals, the murder of women and children, like getting groups of people together under humanitarian, say there's going to be humanitarian aid and then bombing them. That recently happened just in the last 48 hours. So, the left is obviously up in arms about that, but I think the far right is saying, it's not just the Palestinians. This is happening all over. This I guess, Jewish supremacy is, not just happening in, on the outskirts of Israel, whatever territories, but it's happening on a global scale, through things like the pandemic, through things like mass immigration flooding, Western countries. So, in a sense, the anti-Zionist critique of the far right is more profound and is much wider. And that now is an interesting time to sort of actually speak to far left people and to say, listen, the enemy of global solidarity, the enemy of, is what you are now recognising. And that you are on the right page right now, but you need to expand your critique. You know what I mean? You need to expand it, you need to unpack it, and you don't necessarily need to demonise people from the far right. I don't know. I will admit, maybe the far right sees Zionism, under every bed, which of course it isn't. You know what I mean? It's not responsible for every single problem in the world. I think the far right can go too far there, but it does acknowledge that, this kind of problem is a global thing, almost a globalist thing, one could say. So, ladies and gentlemen, I just think it's an interesting time that the far left and the far right can come together at the moment. They can talk to each other, and that maybe the far left can think, maybe the far right does have a point, about, this kind of where they see Zionism involved in a lot more things around the globe than just the bombing of innocent women and children in Gaza. So, I think it's an interesting time. And, I've never seen the far right and far left as enemies. Essentially, they can come together and we can, demand a ceasefire. We can demand an end to wars, not just the ones, around Israel, and all the Middle East wars, which is what the hell's that about, but the end of, wars like the Ukraine one, which is led by the Zionist Zelensky. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. I just wanted to comment on the interesting nexus going on, and thank you all for listening today.